Here's another one of those cabins I start the show with using close-ups of the details and textures and trimmings like this, or maybe the high-tech interfaces or display screens, and I cut back and forth between each one to try and show you the richness and depth of the cabin, knowing that watching on a screen just doesn't quite do it justice. Look at all the swoopy shapes and sculpts, and all of this wood and stitching and leather, and these gorgeous round climate control vents and aluminum speaker covers. Cabins with this much detail and drama and glimmering tech were once pretty much the stuff of cars priced into six-figure territory and owned largely by people who had money fights. Today, this car is bringing flagship-level cabin design down a few notches on the pricing ladder. Meet the all-new Mercedes E300. Just 3 years ago, you needed to buy an S-Class for a cabin like this. That's Mercedes' flagship car, and one with a starting price north of $100,000. Well, here's that cabin again, same flagship level looks and design for tens of thousands cheaper. Now this tester is still a $70,000 car, but giving it a $100,000 cabin is one way to turn in extra value. We'd be here till next Saturday if I was to go over all of the features, but let's look at a few. The instrument cluster, which flows into the central display, is like a giant iPad and fully customizable via these touch sensors on the steering wheel. It feels like a dual monitor setup in your office. The central command controller uses a tracking knob and a touchpad for manipulation of on-screen functions, from the navigation to the driving dynamics and right down to the color of the ambient lighting. The potent stereo system from Burmester is bright and vivid and crisp. The Android Auto system turns the central display into a great big version of my smartphone, which is awesome, and you can even pick how you want your virtual instrument cluster to look with 3 preset themes. I noted no issues with entry or exit or space at any seat. This is a roomy car, even for 4 big adults. Rear seats are deep and surrounded by generous leg and headroom, and that even with the big panoramic roof fitted to the tester. The trunk is deep, wide, long, and pleasantly easy to access thanks to this big unobstructed opening. Wherever you're going, for however long it'll take you to get there, and regardless of who's along for the ride, you'll have space to handle it in comfort. And moving you along is this 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged for 241 horsepower and 273 pounds of torque. This engine targets a shopper concerned more with fuel efficiency than all-out firepower. Low-end torque is impressive though, able to get the E300 up to speed with minimal revs and barely a peep if you aren't in a rush. It feels effortless, never overworked. It's also great on fuel, responsive from very low revs, and hustles better than its numbers lead on, even pressing heads into headrests at times. Included were 4Matic all-wheel drive and an automatic transmission with paddle shifters. Notably, with 9 gears, highway cruising revs land just above idle, which keeps noise levels and fuel consumption down. So how's she drive? Well, the wind and road noise are little more than a distant roar. The engine never needs to rev beyond about 1500 RPM and is all but inaudible. And even encountering cracked pavement, expansion joints, and tar strips, all you ever hear is a soft and distant pitter-patter from underneath.
This is comfort first, and it does that so well it even lightened my typically heavy foot and made me want to just sit back and relax. There is a sport mode available if you like to get things a little riled up under the hood and stiffen the steering for sportier handling, but really, this car performs best to its task when you're driving it gently.
Push it a little and that comes to light. The suspension is soft, so the handling is a bit roly-poly, and the steering transmits little if any feel of the road back to the driver. It's a little squishy and out of its element when you turn up the speed in corners compared to some competitors. It is comfort first, remember. Braking system performance is really good. There's good feel at the pedal. The brakes are nearly sports car precise, and the E300 pulls down from speed with urgency. A closer look at this big braking system, complete with drilled rotors and massive calipers, helps to explain why. Interestingly, the car can work those brakes without your help, with nothing short of the latest and outward-looking hazard detection tech enabled by various cameras and sensors. E300 can autonomously slow or stop to avoid certain types of accidents with cars or pedestrians. And how's this for slick? It knows if it's about to be rear-ended and can pre-prepare the restraints and brakes to minimize injury. It can also maintain a safe following distance in traffic thanks to one of the best radar cruise systems I've ever used. Plus, when you turn it on, it can self-steer to stay centered in its lane, or even totally steer for you, or even change lanes for you. Click the signal and the E300 checks its blind spots with radar and moves over on its own if the way is clear. It's a real conversation starter, even if I'm more a fan of the human being doing the driving. The E300 can even play a sound over the stereo before an impact that Mercedes says activates your ear's natural defenses and can prevent hearing damage. Who comes up with this stuff? Complaints? Well, some drivers will wish for more power. The gear shifter is still this fussy little stock that often seems counterintuitive, and don't push this button to spray the windshield wipers as you drive down the highway because that puts it in park, which will be expensive. Finally, there's a hefty learning curve to many of the fancies in here. You'll need to spend some quality time with your E300 to figure them out and get practiced. Can I suggest a long highway drive for that purpose? That's what this car feels built for through and through.
End of the day, if next generation technology, great fuel mileage, sci-fi level safety systems, and a lavish cabin that hits above its weight while supporting a totally comfort-first driving experience are your priorities, well, this car deserves your immediate attention.
You'll also want to drive this, the new Volvo S90. It's similar in many ways, also more powerful, less complicated to interface with, costs about the same, and has more potent stereo and lighting systems. If you're driving one, be sure to drive the other. It's a great time to be shopping in this segment. Thanks for watching.